Okay, so this is often overlooked and typically an afterthought. I'm not gonna lie, I've actually seen this happen numerous times where agents will simply go to their brokerage's marketing departments, request for a logo, and all that person will do is look for some fancy fonts on Google, type out that agent's name, and then call it a day. The reality is, if you have not invested enough time on your logo or your personal brand, then you're really setting yourself up for a very sloppy first impression. Emmanuel here, and the topic of today's video is really about real estate logo design and really trying to nail it down correctly the first time. So there's this really great analogy I found on 99 Designs when I was researching this video that specifically talks about how business is a lot like dating. So in business, your goal is to try to attract the right clients and to have them fall essentially head over heels in love with you and your brand. So just like a dating app, your logo is essentially your profile picture or your avatar. And clients typically look at that logo and make an initial first impression about who you are and what you're about long before ever scheduling a call or a consultation with you. And just with that simple premise, your logo has huge implications on first impressions. At its core, your logo is the most important component of your brand, so why not nail it down correctly the first time? And that's really the premise of today's conversation, which is to provide you with some simple tips and tricks to really nailing down your logo. Okay, so big tip number one boils down to identifying your brand. I would like for you to answer these questions. Why did you start your business? Why did you go into real estate? What are some of the beliefs and values that you have for your company? Why do you think you're better than all of your other competitors, and what makes you special? If you can describe your brand in 3 words, what would those 3 words be? And lastly, what are 3 words that you think customers would use to describe your brand? Now, the reason I request for you to answer these questions is simply because your logo communicates your brand's personality. And once you're able to clearly identify your brand, then putting together a logo will be a complete piece of cake. Now, tip number 2 boils down to finding some inspiration. I highly recommend whipping out a notepad or a piece of paper and start sketching out ideas. Really think about your audience and how you want them to perceive your brand. Another really great idea, and I actually have a lot of my clients doing this as well, is to create a mood board. A really easy way of doing this is actually just to create a Pinterest account. It's free, and what you'd want to do once you have your Pinterest account is search for logos and start pinning logos that you actually really like. If anything, this exercise will at least make things so much easier for you to explain your desired vision to a logo designer, and it really just bridges the gap between what you're visualizing in your head and what the final outcome will be in the form of maybe a prototype or your final logo. All right, tip number 3 is all about design style. There are actually a bunch of different design styles out there, like classic, retro or vintage, modern, minimalist, and handcrafted. When you're looking for inspiration for your logo, these are the typical commonalities in terms of design style that you see across all logos. Once you've identified the commonalities, it'll be much easier for you to categorize the style of logo that you want to create. Okay, tip number 4 is about logo type. And just like I mentioned in the previous tip, there are really 7 main types of logos that you can choose from. And those are letter marks, pictorial marks, word marks, abstract marks, mascots, a combination mark, or an emblem. Now, the next tip I have for you is about color. I'm not gonna spend too much time talking about color because I actually have a really great video where I go in detail about the psychology of color and the different emotions that different colors give off. I'm gonna leave the link for that video in the description below in case you wanna watch it for future reference. But I will say this, different colors do give off different emotions. For example, red often gives off the emotion of excitement or anger, while yellow is a little bit more accessible or friendly. Something like blue is a little bit more calming, while something like pink is more feminine and a lot more retro. Okay, tip number 6 is all about typography. And what I mean by typography is fonts. This is probably one of the most overlooked components when designing a logo. And since we're talking about fonts, there's really only 4 main types of fonts you need to be aware of. The first one being the serif font, which is more classic and timeless. Then there's the sans serif font, which looks a lot more modern and clean. There is the script font, which looks like handwriting. And lastly, there are the display fonts, which look more decorative and they are highly stylized. Again, you're gonna wanna choose a font really based off of your personality. Okay, my last big tip for you is to visualize your logo on different collateral. You know, I've actually seen this happen quite often with agents where they spend a lot of time designing a very intricate logo that looks really great on a desktop or maybe on a mobile device, but when you put it on a business card, it ends up looking like an ink blot. Or maybe when you put it on a for sale sign, it looks like a bunch of squiggly lines. So the goal here is to try to identify or create a logo that is easy to identify, both, you know, from up close or from far away. You want to be able to see that logo, whether it be tiny on a business card or on a postcard, or huge like on a park bench or a for sale sign. Okay, to wrap things up, unless you had a previous career as a graphic designer or illustrator, you're gonna have to find someone to design this logo for you. So with that being said, the biggest red flag for you is to find a designer that says that they can build your logo in 24 hours. The reality is great logos take time. They have to go through several iterations. Sometimes it can take days, if not weeks, to really nail down that final design. So I want to set that expectation with you now. This process is going to take a bit of time for you to create. That being said, let me end with a quick pro tip. And that is, if you do everything that I mentioned in this video and outline it in maybe a Word document or a Google Doc, and send that to your designer, you will find that it actually expedites the time to design and develop a logo substantially. Anyway, I hope you found this video helpful, and if you did, make sure you click the like button, also hit the subscribe button, as well as the bell icon, and maybe drop a comment below. And by the way, if you have any more questions, just feel free to reach out to me. I'll be happy to get back to you as quickly as possible. Anyway, thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys on the next video.